5:30, and I would like to call this meeting to order. If we will stand, remove our hats for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mary Kay, roll call, please.
Dr. Dave Bardo,
Here.
Bobby Brown. Here. Jill Maddock Nelson.
Here.
Kristen Matt Miller. Andy Mary.
Here.
Danny Pyatt.
Here.
Angie Schreiber.
Here.
JD Schrader.
Here.
Catherine Solon.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum of the board present for the May 2023 school board meeting. Next item is student representatives report. Lucy?
Thank you.
Hi, I'm just going to run through our usual agenda for what we have for you guys. First is our academics column, and with the year ending very soon, exciting, we have finals on Tuesday and Wednesday for seniors, and most of the regular finals for underclassmen will be next week, Wednesday, Thursday-ish. All the teachers typically do them like different time, but that's the general. Field trips, the child care careers class is going to West Elementary on May 26th. I guess they're having special event hat day. Special events, there's the spring choir concert tonight at 7. If you guys wrap this up fast, you can maybe make it down there. And the mural project will be presented on May 22nd at 3:45, and the end time is 5. Oh, I have the 24th on there. I'm sorry. May 24th. Today's May 22nd. I need Ava here to help me. She's on the details. Looking ahead, graduation is on June 4th with practice on June 2nd. Graduation starts at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And the last day of school is the 2nd. And then sports and clubs, a lot of regional games coming up. Softball varsity has regionals at home tomorrow versus Merrill. The baseball team is currently playing an away game in Merrill tonight and has a regional game on Thursday at home against Rhinelander. Track and field is currently competing at their regional event in Clintonville. Girls soccer will begin their regionals next Tuesday, but the details are still to be determined. Boys tennis had regionals today with players advancing to sectionals, so that's exciting. And golf has varsity regionals tomorrow in Rice Lake, but they leave tonight for their golf regionals, so hopefully that'll be exciting. Any questions? Okay.
Good job. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right. If you come to the mic, you can.
So I am biased, but the musical was selected through the Jerry Awards. Basically, it's the state competition for Jerry's, and our musical was selected out of over 100 schools to represent, and my daughter, Logan Proyle, I am biased, was selected as lead, so they get to go perform on June 11th down in Madison. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. Okay, moving along, I would like for the following couple of young ladies to come to the front, please, and that is Juliana Boutnick and Marnie Kubaki. If the two of you will come down to the front. As they're coming, I just want to say publicly I'm very proud of these two young ladies. I've watched them grow up over the last several years. In fact, Juliana, I used to pick her up and take her over to All Saints whenever she was a student at All Saints. And then Marnie, of course, watching her grow and mature in the marching band and all things band. I'm going to certainly miss seeing her in the drum line next year, that's for sure. But I'm going to come over there and hopefully project my voice. All right, some of you may not know, and you might find out tonight, that Juliana Boutnick is our valedictorian for this year, 2023, for the senior high school here at Annandale High School. And we want to present to her the Distinguished Scholastic Achievement while a student at the Annandale High School, and is presented to you on this night to Juliana Boutnick.
Thank you very much.
And Marty is the Salutatorian, and in recognition of Distinguished Scholastic Achievement while a student at the Annandale High School, we want to thank her and appreciate her for all of her achievements here at school, and present her with this certificate as well. Congratulations. We look forward to hearing their speeches on June.
What are you guys doing next year?
All right, so I will be reattending North Central Technical College for my second associate's degree, which will be fire medic, and then from there I will be continuing on to UW Oshkosh for the fire and emergency response management bachelor. So I hope to stay with Antigo Fire.
Cool.
Right.
And I will be attending the University of Wisconsin-Madison for a degree in biochemistry.
Congratulations. One more time, let's give them a hand for their achievement. Okay, moving along to item C, public comment. Mary Kay, do we have, I think I see some names. While Mary Kay is bringing the book up to me, to permit fair and orderly public expression, the board shall provide a period for public participation at every regular meeting of the board and publish rules to govern such participation in board meetings. The presiding officer shall be guided by these rules. Public participation shall be permitted before the board takes official action on any issue of substance. Attendees must register their intention to participate in the public portion of the meeting upon their arrival at the meeting. Participants must be recognized by the presiding officer, will be requested to preface their comments by an announcement of their name and group affiliation if and when appropriate. Each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 5 minutes duration, and Mary Kay will keep the 5 minutes, and she will notify us whenever you're getting close to the 5 minutes. No participant may speak more than once on the same topic unless all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard. Participants shall direct all comments to the board and not to staff or other participants. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No person may address or question the board members individually. The presiding officer may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement when the statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. Request any individual to leave the meeting when that person does not observe the reasonable decorum. Request the assistance of law enforcement officers in the removal of a disorderly person when that person's conduct interferes with the orderly progress of the meeting. Or call for a recess or an adjournment to another time when the lack of public decorum so interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting as to warrant such action. Those are the rules for public comment. And first, Connie Greeny. Thank you.
Well, I'll try not to be disorderly. Okay, do I need to change this? Can you hear?
You're fine. There
Okay.
you go. Thank you.
Okay, well, the reason I'm here is for the Belonging mural, the Legacy mural. And I wanted to thank you all for supporting the project in whatever way you could. And this was the vision of Justin Markgraf, and he met me at a conference. Anyway, a few of you I've seen in the schools looking at different parts of the project. We started way back last spring, and I came here in September, did a few meetings in August and so on. And one of the things I want you to know is that I've traveled all around the Midwest as well as Europe, been in lots of different schools. This facility this building in particular is really good. One of the best ones, and the maintenance staff in all of the schools have been fabulous to work with. The cleanliness, their attitudes, I mean, it's just been really, really positive. So I wanted to say that first. And then you probably know already from the Statistics Center of Disease and Disaster Control and Prevention that there's about 3 in 5 kids, our youth, that's 57%, feel like they are depressed, discouraged, hopeless, and probably it's a persistent feeling. It's not just occasional. And 1 in 3 have actually thought about suicide. That's 30%. The reason I bring this up is this has increased in the last 10 years, especially during COVID, with a number of students really engaged in computer and cell phone use and not having the personal relationships. And my goal for the murals is actually to foster a sense of community and working together. The youth need purpose, they need rules, they need guidelines, they need security, and they need support. So I feel like that's happened in this project. I've worked with some kids that nobody could get anything else out of them. Teachers, please, can they work with you or whatever? So we've had a lot of interesting things that have happened as a result of that. In fact, today, some cool things happen. Anyway, these community projects and school projects encourage participation and purpose. And the main goal of this one was to build a sense of belonging and community with different age groups and so on. And this particular big project, the community project in front of the high school, it's not quite done yet, but it's very close. We have a banner to put on that has imagery of kids holding hands, and it says, "We belong." And then all the tiles are done, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. So basically, that is a visual representation of your community, starting from the design that elementary, high school, and middle school kids drew pictures that I used to set up a design. And the designs that I set up for each school actually changed because the size of the clay and the tiles ended up being larger than what I had planned for the design. So instead of having one small mural, most of them have 2 or 3. So that was pretty good. And they also represent the clubs and organizations in each school as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the tile making. I want you to raise your, I like to ask questions. I used to be a teacher too. So if you could raise your hand if you made a tile for the mural. Okay, about half of us. Okay, so there are also spirals that are made with glass gems that are to represent all of the people who didn't or couldn't participate for whatever reason. And so you can choose your favorite color and probably find it on there in one of those spirals. And spirals were done by middle school kids and also drawings from the elementary. And I think spirals represent growth. What? Okay. They represent growth and so on. And also there's all kinds of science in there. And then there 5 trails were represented with names and rectangles of the families in the area. And then agriculture, if you look at, see those trails, it's also the agriculture, the loam, and there's even some potatoes in there. There's a dragonfly, a green emerald dragonfly on there, that it only is in Antigo and also up to Door County. It's just in Wisconsin, basically. So I was hoping that you might have some questions, and of course, I hope that all of you will attend the opening reveal on the 24th at 3:45 to 5.
Thank you, Connie.
Questions?
I look forward to being there Wednesday
Okay.
for that opening reveal.
Thank
And
you.
I think there'll be some other board members there. I
Perfect.
believe that our mayor is going to be there as well.
Oh,
So,
I didn't know
it'll be,
that.
It'll be a nice presentation there.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Do you have any
for all your hard
questions,
work.
anyone? Well, you can ask me when you see me.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, next we have Sydney Schwartz.
Is that good? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I will be speaking on behalf of the apprehensions of many students who attend Antigo High School and will be attending for the upcoming school year. We have a collective concern for our current education and for the college and after high school opportunities of our futures that will be drastically impacted by the changing of periods from the current 8-hour schedule to a modified 7-hour schedule. To begin, taking away the option of having a study hall during any part of the day takes away the customability of schedules for the students who work best with a break during the middle of their day, or even from the students with academic excellence who have been given the privilege of leaving the school early when having an 8-hour study hall. Personally, my day works best with no study hall at all. Taking away another hour is also taking away more teenagers' opportunities to work through co-op, especially when many of those people don't otherwise have a job because they choose to do sports for the majority of the year. Secondly, the addition of a non-negotiable study hall-like pride time in the mornings is not going to change any student's participation from the amount of effort they are already putting into their current pride times and/or study halls. As it is, many use the pride times they have as a social hour, being able to go wherever you want and confer with your friends as to where they're going. Also, I feel as though not having a specific class that you will miss right away in the mornings and that you may fall behind in if you miss will decrease students' desire to go to school in the mornings. With this new addition in a school where students have the freedom of driving, there would be no surprise if there was a spike in absences during first hour. Furthermore, students such as myself are already struggling to fit everything they want and need to fit into their schedules. I won't name every class I plan on taking, but I currently have 8.5 periods scheduled for next year and 9 for my senior year. Obviously, I will have to cut some of this as it is, but why would we want to make succeeding students cut down on their schedules even more? There is an argument that changing the schedule won't affect every student, and therefore we should prioritize the ones who need more help in one specific area over those who like to spread themselves out in preparation for further education. To this I say that it seems a common theme to accommodate every situation for those who do not care about their education, and for those who will not try anyway, no matter the circumstances, over those who do care about the learning they receive here. To change the nature of students in the classroom is not something you can fix by reconstructing their schedule. To change their nature, you will need consistency and people who care about them and their in-class performance. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services states that children and teenagers will be able to better focus if they are met with consistency each day, and there seems to be anything but within our school district. Next, there is a feeling that the voices of students in our high school are not as listened to as they used to be. I made a petition regarding this issue on Wednesday, May 3rd. This petition was posted by me at about 6 p.m. on my Snapchat story, which includes about 95% other students and about 5% family or students from other schools. It was then reposted by about 3 or 4 other students that same night, and I'm not sure exactly what their demographic is on their stories. Regardless, overnight this petition received approximately 100 signatures. Later that week, on Friday, May 5th, I was pulled out of my second-hour class by principals Mr. Roger and Miss Maddock. They claimed that very few other students actually cared about this schedule change, but I do believe the evidence of over 100 signatures overnight speaks for itself. While I was preparing myself for a meeting with them and was making notes for it, I had none of this available to me in the actual hour-and-a-half meeting that took place. While it may not have been the intention, this meeting caused me a lot of stress, and I got the feeling from it that my petition was a large inconvenience to the school and that it would be better if I just stopped it. I feel this was an impeachment on my freedom of speech and right to peaceful protest, and I felt incredibly degraded following this meeting. I ended up missing 2 more class periods after this, as I was quite honestly crying in the counseling office. Needless to say, the way that students who oppose what the principal's ideas are dealt with needs serious improvement, especially because I had truly done nothing wrong. While I know it's not as simple as someone offering a solution and it being implemented, I do have an idea that I feel would better meet the needs of students. Giving us the option to use the time that is already available for homerooms and changing those to pride times every day. I don't think you'll see a dramatic change in our school scores no matter what part of their day you try to transform. Having a pride time every day during the already available time will give students the opportunity to more regularly meet with various teachers if needed, while also allowing them to take every class they need and or want to in the 8-hour day. Also, the worry of students skipping the first hour of the day would decrease because there will be a class there instead, and therefore something to miss if you are not there. Thank you in advance for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Sydney, for bringing that to us, and Sydney, I would like for you to invite you to come to the curriculum committee meeting on June the 5th and come sit by me at that meeting, at that committee meeting, because we're going to be discussing that schedule plan at that committee meeting. So please come and let's hear those ideas that you have, okay? Thank you so much.
Did we talk about that already and I just missed it?
We did not. No. Okay, moving on to item 3, consent agenda. I do want to remind the board members to check and make sure that you have your voting device with your name on the back, so that way you're casting your own ballot. Letter number A, approval of agenda, minutes, finance reports, requests for overnight travel, report of district retirements and resignations, and report of district new hires. I will be looking for a motion.
I move the board approve the agenda minutes from the April 24th, 2023 Board of Education meeting, May committee meeting minutes, minutes from the April 27th, 2023 and May 11th, 2023 expulsion hearings, and minutes from the May 8th, 2023 special meeting, insurance renewal, district retirement and resignation report, report of district new hires, request for overnight travel, financial reports for April 2023, consideration of current bills, checks number 6851 through 6949, in the amount of $540,254.29. ACHs numbers 22230195 through 2223011213 in the amount of $259,229.69, and one wire transfer in the amount of $15,338.12 for a total of $814,822.10.
Okay, Jill made the motion. Jill, would you like to speak to that motion?
No. Thank you.
Is there any discussion on the motion on the floor?
I have
Angie?
one question regarding the insurance. So during the special meeting, was that, I guess, the action of voting to go ahead and go forward with that, or that did not need to come to this board meeting? Is that correct? Am I understand that correctly?
Katie Ann?
Correct. We had a full quorum at that meeting, and we pushed through the renewal rates so we could do open enrollment, which started 3 days after that.
Okay.
So, yep.
I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah,
Yep.
that meeting was posted as
Yep.
such of being an action meeting. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any other questions regarding the motion on the floor?
Mary Kay, I'll be abstaining on check number 6910.
Are there any other questions of the motion on the floor? Are there any other questions of the motion on the floor? Hearing no questions, your voting devices are open. Would anybody like to change their vote? All right, the voting is now closed, Dustin, and the motion passes. Moving on to item number 4, board action. Letter A, consideration to approve 7 Mindsets license renewal, social emotional learning curriculum, K through 12.
Mr. President, I voted negatively in the previous board meeting, so I am allowed to bring back this motion, and I move the board approve the 7 Mindsets license renewal as presented.
Motion is on the floor. Dr. Bardo, you may speak to your motion.
I have a concern about the cost, but as we go forward, I believe it's through a grant or through, correct? Yes, through a grant. I want to point out, though, that SEL is not required by the state, according to Lisa Stein, who works at DPI. and that it is not a law or a statute, but what it is what we call competencies, which is really a set of goals for our students to improve themselves. But I will be voting yes.
Is there any other board member who would like to speak to this motion on the floor?
I would like to.
Jill?
I voted in favor of this the first time, though did verbalize my concerns regarding feasibility with the cost and a long-term plan to be able to sustain if something like 7 Mindsets or a comparable is wanting to be utilized moving forward. So I'm interested if there's any feedback on long-term planning or feasibility moving forward from administration in terms of if there's anticipation to bring 7 Mindsets to the board next year or the following year, kind of what the longer-term plan is.
Okay. Bree, I'm going to call on you. And Heidi, you guys can tag team together if you want to come join her.
For a reason, because I knew I'd want to speak. So I just wanted to first address Dr. Bardo's comment. He's correct. Social emotional learning is not required by a DPI state statute. However, I did print off, and I have highlighted for you, statute that actually Megan Murphy and myself found, and I just want to provide this for you because what this statute said, it's statute 118.01, and it's letter D under personal development. And each school board shall provide an instructional program designed to give pupils the skills needed to cope with social change, the ability to construct personal ethics and goals. Can you hand these out for me, please? Thank you. The skills needed to make sound decisions, knowledge of the conditions which may cause and the signs of suicidal tendencies, knowledge of relationships between youth suicide and the use of alcohol and controlled substances, etc. Knowledge of effective means by which pupils may recognize, avoid, and prevent and halt physically or psychologically intrusive or abusive situations which may be harmful to pupils, etc. I have it printed for you. It's a lot of verbiage, but that's what our 7 Mindsets is working on. It's literally targeting skills needed to work with social change, the ability to construct personal and ethics and goals, number 7 and number 8 as well. So while it doesn't say you need a social and emotional learning curriculum, what we're teaching in our social emotional learning curriculum is in the statutes. So I wanted to first address that. The long-term plan for 7 Mindsets is to continue with 7 Mindsets. I know that we've applied for another grant that could cover it for 2 more years, but I think that yes, the plan is to bring 7 Mindsets or a different social emotional learning curriculum, dependent on what we feel like our district's needs are at the time, back to the board every year. And I know that 7 Mindsets is fitting our 4K through 12 needs at this time. As we continue developing it, as we continue to monitor fidelity and use and applicability, our kids change. They change all the time, right? So right now it's meeting our needs. And so for now, we're bringing 7 Mindsets. We will very likely bring 7 Mindsets back next year. I don't know how many years we'll bring 7 Mindsets forward, but we need to see how their curriculum is matched up to what our needs are. And it is currently grant funded. And Heidi's ready. She's ready to speak. How'd I do? You did great.
Jill, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions about the motion that is on the floor?
Heidi, in the email we got, it said it's a 3-year cycle, so it's offering different content for 3 years, and then it starts over, sort of? Is that what that
Are you
means?
talking about the 7 Mindsets quote?
Yeah.
So just understand too that we are not using really any of the professional development. We've cut it by almost $30,000 from the previous. We just access the online resources as stated in the quote, because as our teachers get trained and are able to implement, they will be updating the curriculum, I'm sure. They try to stay up with, and that's probably why. So it's not going to change, though every year a teacher has to learn new curriculum. It's developmental. It's based on CASEL which is based on the competencies that DPI has adapted in social emotional. So,
But yes, JD,
So-
there are 3 different years
Yeah.
of curriculum, and it essentially takes what you learn the first year, and you grow and stretch a little bit more the next year, and grow and stretch a little bit more the next year. What our counseling department has done is we've really made it like plug and play for our teachers. I've already started, with the exception of 7 Mindsets information, on the PowerPoint for next year, which literally has LinkedIn, so they can click on the link. It has discussion prompts, etc. But next year's content, with the same overarching ideas and constructs, will have slightly different content, different videos. I mean, kids aren't gonna wanna watch the same video 5 years in a row, right? So it's the same umbrella ideas with a slight tweak every year. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
and so just as a clarifying point too, that was a separate state statute in 118, but state statute that talks about ACP, academic and career planning, also has social emotional development as part of what we're required to cover. That's what it was sent to you guys as well as the school counseling standards that we are required to have within state statute as well. And so part of this is you take away what counselors do to support teachers. That's their whole role. So while the standards, there aren't specific standards, and that's because it is local control to some degree as far as what your community wants your kids to learn. And that's why the state isn't going to say, learn this, learn that, when it comes to character education and social emotional learning. They give some autonomy, but we are charged in state statute and our board policy in 2 different areas to make sure that that happens. And this gives our teachers and our counselors a foundation, and our students to be able to build the consistency that Ms. Schwartz was talking about throughout our district.
Thank you. Angie, go ahead.
When you talk about building consistency and building that foundation for our teachers, how is that different from what the responsive classrooms that we agreed to go with?
I think that that was clarified, I thought, last time, but responsive classroom is kind of the classroom management side. That's how teachers are able to respond consistently. It actually aligns with a lot of the stuff that 7 Mindsets, while it's a curriculum, it's also talking about student regulation and things like that that are built in. So we look at even with restorative practices, all of this is crosswalk to make sure that it's being built across the systems in the different areas. And that's the work that CISA comes and does with us as well to help us facilitate and support our teachers in order to do curriculum, and then supporting classroom management, which is just another piece of the student social emotional development and what our teachers are given in the classroom to be able to responsive classroom to students.
Thank you.
Last year,
Wait 1 second, JD. Let me ask if anybody else has anything to say. Bobby, go ahead.
So I understand that you say that 7 Mindsets is an instructional program, and I would agree that that is probably not wrong and makes sense. But I'm just wondering about comparables to that 7 Mindsets.
Bobby, can you get a little closer to your mic?
7 Mindsets program with other programs that are doing similar, grant funded or not. Are you talking about like other districts, like they use other programs like Leader in Me or whatever that might be? Yeah, so when the high school, and Bree can step in too, because I think at the time she was part of that. When we first looked at a curriculum or something that our counselors could support teachers in doing, they did comparables and they actually looked at different programs. And 7 Mindsets fit that committee, said that's the one that fits us, and that's the one we want to go with. I think we even looked at Leader in Me. It's also about cost. It's also about K-12 and for K-12. So when the high school piloted, they did it. We were still doing second step at the elementary. And so we couldn't build consistency. So 2 years ago, we had a committee of staff come together and say, what do we want to do? Do we want to stay with 7 Mindsets? Do we want to move to a 4K-12 approach? And they wanted to do a 4K-12 approach, and they saw the value and benefit of 7 Mindsets. But you can, I don't know if you were more involved.
Yeah, so there's hundreds of different programs. I can't even begin to tell you. They're all approved by CASEL, which is our social emotional learning standards. They set our standards for us. I had a team of people, some elementary, some middle, and some high school people who came together and said, okay, we're doing second step at the elementary and middle, and we're doing 7 mindsets at the high school. A lot of our elementary and middle school didn't feel like second step was meeting their needs. And so we said, okay, what other types of programs can we look into? We had 7 mindsets in the back of our mind because 7 mindsets was at the high school. Now that didn't mean we were automatically going with 7 mindsets. We looked at Leader in Me, we looked at Sources of Strength, and we looked at 7 mindsets and second step. The reason that we landed on 7 mindsets was because we felt like as a team, we could support the implementation of 7 mindsets. Leader in Me, while there are really great reviews on Leader in Me, there's like a 5-day intensive training that all staff members have to go through. That's not sustainable for us. I mean, that's over half of our back to school professional development days. Plus there's continual training that needs to happen. So we've heard that it's a really good program. However, we need to be able to sustain this program too. And so that's why the first year of 7 mindsets, after this team piloted 7 mindsets, and I believe I spoke to some of the board members, some of you are new, but I did speak to some of the board members last year about that pilot program and the positive reviews, and there were some that were questioning, like, how are we gonna sustain 7 mindsets as well? And so with everything, there's growing pains, but that pilot group said, we feel like 7 mindsets would meet our needs more than second step currently is meeting our needs. It would I would provide cohesion to our school district because up until this school year, our students were going to 7th grade getting some language in the social emotional learning realm. And then they'd come to high school and we would flip the language and it would be completely different. And so providing that cohesion and that, just that 4K through 12 tie. We've had some growing pains, we've worked through those. It's kind of a all hands on deck with some of the activities that we do. Our teaching staff still really do appreciate it. They appreciate how easy it is and how applicable some of the conversations can be. I'm not going to tell you every lesson lands with our students, right? Like, that's teaching, that's being an adult. But there are some that teachers are like, wow, I really didn't think that that lesson was going to land with my students and we were going to have such a great conversation, and we did. And we actually extended it for 3 days because I couldn't fit it into my time and I needed to get science and math and English in, but we continued talking about it the next day. So that's why we went with 7 mindsets, although there are hundreds of CASEL and DPI approved.
They all have the 6 standards though, just know.
And within our DPI grant, which is where the DPI mental health grant, which is where we're pulling the funds to pay for it, they had a smaller list of approved curriculums, and 7 mindsets was on that list. So we felt like we could go with 7 mindsets and still have our costs covered through that grant.
Bobby, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. A little concerned about the money going forward, the cost going forward, and not knowing if those grant funds are there.
For sure.
Okay, JD?
Can you just, what are the 7 mindsets again? You had a really pretty attachment for us a year ago.
I
Like,
had a
did
whole
I ask you?
presentation put together and I was told I didn't need
Oh,
it.
but right, just, do you remember them off the top of your head?
Everything is possible, live to give, I can't. Passion first. I said everything is possible. I don't know, I use
I could
them all
probably
the
Google
time.
it, I suppose, instead of putting you on the spot.
Sorry.
You can go back to months.
I look at them all the time.
Presentations we've made.
Are there any other questions from board members? Angie? Oh, I'm sorry, Kristen hasn't had a question yet. So go ahead.
I would just like to say that last year I voted no for this, and the reason being is I was a concern with the test scores, and we could take this time and put it into math and science. Behavior continues to be an issue. They aren't going to learn math and science if their behaviors aren't under control. So this is something that addresses that. We've talked about that we need to get behaviors under control. We talked that we need to give the students the tools they need. This is that tool. And so I am voting yes this year because I have learned, I have done the research, and it's what's best for our district.
Angie, before you talk, Julie's going to give the 7 mindsets so that way.
Oh, thanks,
JD can
I got it now too.
Building a common language. No. Oh,
Just
Nope.
redo it. Oh.
everything is possible. Passion first. We are connected.
100% accountable, attitude of gratitude, live to give, and the time is now.
Angie, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that when we're trying to provide the consistency, I know for a fact that everybody teaches this different. There's no consistency. Some teachers take it more seriously than others, and I'm not dissing on our teachers at all. They all do a great job. But there's different levels of that this is introduced to the kids. And then I think that the feedback that I've heard is that the kids don't take the time when the videos are shown or the exercises are done to even take it seriously. So I think the teachers know how to work this in to everyday teaching, and I think we need to get back to focusing on academics. And because of that, I'm going to vote no. I voted no last time, and I will so again.
Okay. Any other questions from the board members?
I was just going to finish from earlier, so I echo Kristen's feedback. I will also, again, for the second time, be voting in support of 7 Mindsets. It is a need to address behaviors, and we do need to do something, and I support that. Again, my concern is just the longevity, fidelity. How can we, if we're relying on grants but don't get one, what do our staff have, or what are we prepared for as a district then to meet that need if we don't have funding moving forward? So that, as I shared the first time, is my concern specific to 7 Mindsets and others for that matter.
So I just wanted to address 2 things.
Quickly.
So part of the implementation, because you are correct that it takes fidelity of implementation, and part of the grant and the work that we're doing next year is to reinforce the implementation of not only 7 Mindsets, but responsive classroom as well, and to put things in place to make sure that we do the best that we can with that. It's never going to be 100%, but get closer to that. And then I'm just going to put a plug in. I don't think that this is something that we should look at as extra. I think for now we have grant funds, but at some point I agree that it needs to be just like we look at math and we look at reading, and we make a commitment, whether it's with general funds or other funds that are important, because if we do believe that we need to make sure kids are ready to learn, then we need to support that regardless of grant funds or not moving forward.
Thank you. Any other questions from board members?
I just want to say I wish I would have provided my presentation because it would have answered some of your questions.
And your girls have done a great job. Thank you. Any other questions from board members? Okay, Dustin, we have the voting devices open. You have the motion before you to approve the 7 Mindsets license renewal as presented. JD.
Sorry. I was reading this reading law. You gave me this whole list.
Okay, would anybody like to change their vote? Okay, voting is now closed. Dustin? And the motion carries 6-3. Moving right along to item B, consideration to approve charge for facilities task force. I will be looking for a motion.
I move the board approve the board charge for facilities task force.
Motion has been made by Angie. Would you like to speak to your motion, please, Angie?
No.
Are there any questions of the motion on the floor to approve the board charge for the facilities task force? Are there any questions to move the board charge for the facilities task force? Hearing no questions, Dustin, the voting devices are open. Would anybody like to change their vote? The voting is now closed. Dustin, can you reveal? And the motion carries. Item C, consideration to approve Carnegie Hall choir trip proposal. I will be looking for a motion.
I move the board approve Antigo High School Choir begin planning for the spring 2024 Carnegie Hall trip.
Motion has been made by Jill. Would you like to speak to your motion?
No, thank you.
Are there any questions from board members about this motion? We've heard this in committee. Are there any questions from board members regarding the Carnegie Hall trip? Hearing no questions, we will open the vote. Would anybody like to change their vote? The voting is now closed, and the motion carries. Item letter D, consideration to approve touch screen Chromebook purchase request. Looking for a motion.
I move the board approve the bid from CDW for 125 touchscreen Chromebooks in the amount of $36,500.
Motion is on the floor by Dr. Bardo. Would you like to speak to your motion?
It was brought to the Finance Committee, and we moved it to the board.
Is there any questions or discussion on the motion on the floor from any board members?
I'm curious on how
Yes,
many
ma'am.
Chromebooks are rotated. Who is getting the 125 new touchscreen?
Katie Ann, can you come and clarify that, please?
And Donna might be able to help me a bit, but those are for our kindergarten, first graders this next year. Currently, they are on iPads. No, I believe they are.
So currently, our first grade does have the touchscreen Chromebooks. So next year's request would be that our kindergarten and first grade would have those. Currently, our kindergarten has iPads, and every other grade, 1st through 12, have Chromebooks. So this would kind of help guide them into, you know, the Chromebook, but yet still having the option of the touchscreen.
Does that answer your question, Bobby?
So are all
Thanks,
three
Donna.
schools getting these, Donna?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Are all three schools getting these?
Yes, all three. So all kindergarten students would move from, West has requested to stay with iPads.
Are there any other questions from board members regarding the motion on the floor? Are there any other questions from board members regarding the motion on the floor? Hearing no questions, the voting device is now open. You are voting to approve the bid from CDW for 125 touchscreen Chromebooks, the amount of $36,500. Would anybody like to change their vote? Okay, the voting is now closed, Dustin, and the motion carries. Item letter E, consideration to approve Snap-on auto scanners, the CTE incentive grant purchase. I will be looking for a motion.
I move the board approve the Snap-on auto scanners as presented.
Motion has been presented by Jill. Would you like to speak to your motion?
This was brought to a committee. It is being requested through the CTE incentive grant.
Are there any other questions? Dr. Bardo?
Mr. Churchill and Mr. Prezak said that the newer automobiles that are coming into their shop, their current scanners do not work with the newer models. So this would give us, our students, up-to-date scanners so that when they leave and if they wanted to go into an automotive, they know how to use this scanner. And they also gave an example of one of our students who was in a contest last year, and they gave him one of the new scanners, and he did not know how to operate it because we only had old ones. So I'm going to be voting yes.
Are there any other questions regarding the motion on the floor from the board members? Are there any other questions? Hearing no questions, the voting device is now open to approve the Snap-on auto scanners as presented. Bobby, we're waiting for you. Push that one more time, Bobby. There we go. Anybody like to change their vote? Okay, the voting is now closed. Dustin, thank you. Motion carries. Item letter F, consideration to approve the purchase of DreamBox software. I will be looking for a motion.
I move the board approve the purchase of DreamBox software for elementary and middle school as presented.
Motion has been made by Andy. Would you like to speak to your motion?
This was presented at committee, so no.
Okay. Are there any questions about the motion that is on the floor from the board members?
I have a question.
Angie, go ahead.
Does this work with, like our testing standards and our like the standardized testing that the students take?
Ms. Doms, can you come and help us with this, please?
Hi, everyone. So as far as help with, it's skill aligned, so students are provided additional support in the standard areas. So we've seen a lot of math growth the last few semesters when we've reported out to you, and this is one of the softwares that we started implementing and really supported the growth of the students along with our work with the Math Institute. So it's aligned to standards. It doesn't like feed right into, it doesn't like, I don't know exactly how you want it to align, but it's all standards based. So yes, it is, but I don't know if that quite answers your question.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Thank you, Amy. Are there any other questions on the motion on the floor?
So I'm wondering if
Bobby?
this program was, if we've used this in the past, if there was a trial or a pilot with
Yeah.
DreamBox?
Yeah, this is a renewal.
Are there any other, Jill?
I will share, there's a lot of positive feedback that I've heard about DreamBox from staff and admin and families. So I think it's a valuable tool. My question is the same as earlier with 7 Mindsets in terms of the direction that the district is anticipating moving forward. Just looking at tonight, 7 Mindsets at $30,000 in addition to the purchase last year. Now tonight, with these 2 purchases, is just under $60,000. So in my mind, knowing that there's a financial cliff ahead of us, these types of purchases, I'm interested in what the district's plan is, short-term and long-term, because they're beneficial resources to utilize and have served to be beneficial for our students, but what's our plan should we not have funding available?
So this is coming out of our software budget, which historically has funded 1 ELA and 1 math software at all levels. So we used to be pretty scattered in our approach where maybe different buildings or different teachers were using different things, but we really have honed it down to the best of the best for our students at this moment. So providing a supplemental resource like something online is not unheard of. Often schools will have something to supplement the lessons, extra practice, maybe things to do at home. So as far as like, will software options ever go away? I don't think that that's the direction of learners in today's world. With we have one-to-one Chromebooks, it's good extra practice, and they can also accelerate as well. It's kind of a game format where kids like that, they earn things. Right now this is working well for us. Now 5 years ago we were using more things like IXL math or something different. So new things come out and we always evaluate that and see what's best for our students at any given moment.
It's only $30 a student, 14,000 divided by 480 licenses, so it's pretty cheap, or did I look at that wrong?
I honestly did not prepare the proposal, so I'm sorry. I don't know if that's accurate.
It's pretty good value for $30. I just saw Khan Academy is trying to make an AI version. It's only going to be $10 a month per person, but $10 a month is a lot more than 30 for a year.
Thanks, JD, for that. Any other questions? Are there any other questions for the motion on the floor? Hearing no questions, the voting device is open. Jill, try one more time. Okay, would anybody like to change their vote? Okay, the voting is now closed. And the motion carries 8-1. Moving on to item G, consideration to approve additional full-time elementary substitute. I will be looking for a motion.
I move the board approve an additional full-time elementary substitute as presented.
Motion has been made by Andy. Would you like to speak to the motion, please?
We discussed this a fair amount at committee. My only concern was I doubt if one full-time is enough. One of the questions I asked was how many days did the full-time substitutes we have now come in and not substitute? That was 0. So there's certainly a need, and I see going forward this is how we're going to have to do substitutes.
A lot of good discussion at committee about this. Dr. Bardo?
Yes, and if we remember back to, in the wintertime especially, we heard stories of our principals in our 3 elementary buildings having to go in and basically help out the teachers by sometimes being a full-time sub that day. And I just think that we need, especially now that it's being paid for by CARES, that we add another one at the elementary level. So I'm going to be voting yes.
Are there any other questions regarding the motion on the floor? Bobby?
Yeah, just to be clear, the recommendation is that we hire 4 full-time substitute teachers, 2 at the elementary, 1 at the middle, and 1 at the high school. And so
Bobby, it's there's 3 right now, 1, 1, 1, and the proposal is just to add an additional at the elementary level. You're welcome.
Are there any other questions with the motion on the floor? Any other questions with the motion on the floor? Jill?
Should there be a day where there's not a need for a substitute at the elementary? I know that's not overly likely, but how would that position be utilized? Would they be able to be an additional support staff within a classroom or at the middle or high school? And this may have been discussed in committee. I apologize.
I'll defer that to Dr. Sprague.
Yes, you're correct on both accounts. Either a support staff or other position at the elementary level, or we could easily transfer a sub to another building.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions with the motion on the floor? Any other questions with the motion on the floor? Okay, the voting devices are now open. Would anybody like to change their vote? Voting devices are closed, and the motion passes. Item letter H, consideration to approve R&R contract renewal. Looking for a motion.
I move the board approve the R&R contract renewal as presented.
Motion has been made by Jill. Would you like to speak to your motion?
I would not. I would defer to somebody present at the committee.
Dr. Bardo?
Again, this was at finance. This is our service that we get to help Katie Ann do the insurance renewal contracts for our health insurance and dental. No, we're self-insured in dental. Vision and health. Yeah, vision and health. And so they get all the materials together. They're the ones that send them out to the business like Aspirus to make a quote, and then they help Katie Ann go through the ability to get a quote down about 8%. So we should renew. I don't know of a school district who doesn't have a contract like this.
Jill, does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions? And they did work hard this time with Katie Ann. Are there any other questions? Hearing no questions, the voting devices are now open. Would anybody like to change their vote? Voting is now closed. And the motion carries 8-1. Moving on to item I, consideration to approve Malliette contract addendum for fiscal year 2023-2024. I will be looking for a motion.
I move the board approve the Malliette contract addendum for fiscal year 2023-2024 as presented.
Motion has been made by Dr. Bardo. Would you like to speak to your motion?
I would defer to Katie Ann to explain to the entire board kind of how that went down.
Thank you.
All right, so we go into negotiations at this current time, last year, this current year, and next year on a yearly basis with an addendum.
after those 3 years, then we have the right to kind of look elsewhere if we want to. But at the moment, every year we go into contract negotiations. We started out with an ask of 15%, and we settled on 8% on some things, 4% on a few of the others. So if you have it in front of you, it's only a 4% increase on the mileage rate if over 60 miles a day. Bus capacities for regular education busing and special needs busing went up 8%. And then as you go down, the hourly cost for a driver did increase more than the 8%, but that is due to economy and where salaries are currently at, to be more competitive, to try and hope we can retain our bus drivers that we currently have. This negotiation is good for 1 year. In the negotiation, we are also including to help provide some behavioral response training to the bus drivers as to how to address or deal with any behaviors that do arise on the buses, and then being able to have a training to go over Malliette's expectations and our expectations before the school year begins. Any questions?
Any questions regarding the motion on the floor of the addendum to Malliette? Are there any questions? Katie Ann is ready to answer. Okay, thank you, Katie Ann. The voting device is now open. Would anybody like to change their vote? The voting is now closed. And the motion carries. Item letter J, consideration to approve middle school window. Let me back up. Yes, item J, sorry. Consideration to approve middle school window replacement bid. I will be looking for a motion.
I move the board approve awarding the middle school window project to NASI? NASI Construction LLC with a maximum spend of $3,400,000 based on securing grant funds to offset the difference allocated from Fund 46, minimum amount of $1,200,000, and ESSER funds minimum amount of $800,000. If funds are not secured for the full project amount, building and grounds supervisor will work with the contractor to scale the project accordingly.
Motion has been made by Jill. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Jake did present to committee, and I'm going to follow Dr. Bartle's lead and defer to Jake.
Okay. One thing that was asked by Kristen, she wanted some return on investment explanation. The short answer is you will never receive a return on investment just from efficiencies with windows. When you look at the overall cost of that structural item versus what it costs to heat the building every year, we're in that low $30,000 amount when we look at gas consumption only. I don't have the ability to dial in the exact electrical costs for each fan and things of that nature. You know, at $3 million, you would never, I mean, even at 100 years, you'd never get that back even if you could have zero gas costs, which is not possible. However, what I can explain to help you understand the efficiency side of it is when you look at the existing classroom windows, there's some different styles, and that they rate windows in a U factor. That's a 0.5 to a 0.8 is where our existing windows are. The lower the number, the more efficient they are. The new windows have to have a minimum of 0.32, so 0.32 or lower. I know it's kind of backwards, but so essentially, depending on what exact window you're comparing it to within the middle school, that's 44 to 85% more efficient. So that's a good thing. When we look at the infill around the window, the bigger window opening that they built in to make the small window fit, again, that's approximately, some locations are in R10, to an R15 is the range of them currently. And the specification would bring that up to an R21. So that is between 33 and 70% more efficient. So even though we won't get a return on investment, we certainly are increasing the efficiency of them considerably. Does that answer? Okay.
Yep, thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Jake? Andy?
Sure. But right now, in that space where the windows are going, we have much more fill than window. And in the future, we're going to have more window than fill.
Correct.
So how can you compare the R value of the fill to the U value of the window?
Yeah. With the insulated panels of glass, it's not going to get to an R10. It is going to be less, but overall it is still going to be more efficient system than what we currently have.
Okay.
I don't have, there's a calculation that you can do to take the U value and the R value, but it gets kind of drawn out, and I don't know that we want to, I mean, I can try and send that to you guys if you want to look at it. And
I think, it sounds stupid, Andy, but I prepared poorly for this thought, but I think more natural light in the classrooms makes people happier, makes the students do better. I think there's research on that, more natural light, better.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then the only other question I had was, you put in a maximum spend of 3.4, but a minimum amount coming from Fund 46 and a minimum amount coming from ESSER. Is there any maximum amount that we're going to take from ESSER and Fund 46?
the hopes is that we can secure the grant funding first. Second step would be to use what's left in ESSER. Right now, we currently have 1.2 as a motion that is approved by the board to earmark 1.2 for that. That's why we said. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. Sorry. 1.2 out of, just always try to add it up a little, but.
So if we don't get those grant funds, we're gonna make up the difference from which one? Fund 46 or
That's
ESSER?
where we would come back and give you an update for approval of that. I mean, do you want to speak to that more, Katie?
I can, yeah. So right now, we have 800,000 earmarked for the project, but we all know that some of the positions that are in ESSER are not currently filled. If we don't fill them, we will look at sliding those funds to this project if that is what is needed. So right now, we have 800,000 earmarked. If there's additional, we'll put it towards, and that'll go, if we get the energy grant, that'll be first, ESSER will be used second, Fund 46 third, and there's 1.2 currently there. I'm hoping we can make another contribution this year to Fund 46, which then would increase the amount that we would have to use for this project. Now, let's say we don't increase either one of those, then Jake's got to get his good old dealing hat on and figure out what do we do and how do we go forward in hopes that we can knock out part of the project. So,
When they're doing the debt ceiling negotiation right now and they talk about clawing back unspent COVID funds, does that include ESSER, or does that only mean funds that are still sitting in the federal government accounts, not that they've actually distributed?
that's at state and federal level. That's not at like what's been allocated to the schools.
Okay, so
or
you already
anything.
have, our money is sitting there, they can't.
Correct.
Go ahead.
However, if we do not spend it on an approved expenditure, they will take it back.
Yeah. Which we have until September 2024.
Are there any other questions for Jake or Katie Ann?
Not every day you spend $3 million.
Kristen?
To clarify Andy's point, if we're exceeding the spending of $2 million without the grant, it comes back to the board.
This gives the right to expend up to 3.4 using those three methods, however those methods pan out.
Just to give you clarity on Fund 46, in order for us to put more money into Fund 46, we do need amendment.
Right.
budget approval for that. As far as the, how Katie's gonna handle the ESSER portion, that's done.
Does that answer your question, Kristen? Angie?
I just want to say that this decision is really hard for me because we're looking at spending, 3.4 possibly on these windows, and we're just starting the Building and Grounds Task Force. And we don't know what direction we're going to be leading with that, So it weighs like, are we going to be, throwing in this money at a building that we're not going to use? Likelihood is probably slim, but still, how can we go back to the community after we spend this much money on windows and then all of a sudden say, oh, we decided to go a different direction? So it's a hard decision for me.
Are there any other questions or comments from board members?
I would agree with that. I would agree with what Angie says. I feel that it's a lot of money to vote yes to when, like she said, we are just in the beginning stages of that facilities task force, and we do not have a plan in mind with that group of people yet. So financially, I think it's a hard decision to make.
Bobby, when we approved this, we tried to do this only up to like 2.3 million. I can't remember when, some number of months ago.
Yes.
And our main concern was there's like a very, very low probability that we are not going forward with the middle school in some fashion, just because the cost to replace that much space is $50 million extra or something. So this is, in that time frame, this is cheaper and it'll look a lot better, and hopefully the kids will learn better. It makes me more nervous in terms of, well, we need money to spend on teacher salaries. I'd prefer to spend the money on the teachers, but at some point we need the buildings to stay together.
And the severity of many other maintenance projects where those dollars could go, ESSER funds. So just a comment.
Okay. Any other questions or comments of the motion on the floor? Jake, you go ahead.
I understand all your points, and you make sense in those. However, a couple things. I can't see, as JD said, finding 40-some to $50 million to replace a 160,000 square foot building. And secondly, if we do not expend these funds,
we lose them.
By September of '24, we lose them. And yes, there are other projects that may qualify for that, but that window is closing, if not already closed, to do any type of substantial construction project on that timeline. So
We could buy like 6 reading programs.
Fidelity. Thank you, Amy. Any other questions or comments?
I will just comment, I also feel the same. It's a difficult situation, especially with the task force, where it's at in comparison where this vote is. It's unfortunate that the price did increase from the first time you brought it to us, Jake. And I think really any type of building and ground significant request, we could have the same exact discussion. We could just swap it out with something else. It's unfortunate because our buildings need a significant amount of money. And I think we could shift we could change the request for something different, but still have the same exact conversation we're having right now. So unfortunately, our buildings just require a lot of financial needs. And so it makes it tough, and the timing isn't necessarily the best in terms of the task force and when this ask is coming, although you brought it to us prior. But we have needs across the board.
Anybody else would like to speak? Final ask. Anybody else like to speak to the motion on the floor? Thank you, Jake. The voting device is now open. You are voting on the motion on the floor to approve the middle school window replacement bid. Would anybody like to change their vote? Okay, the voting is now closed. And we have 8 yes and 1 no. The motion carries. I do want to brag on Jake for just a moment. I think we need to give Kit kudos. 2 weeks ago, I was in the Vom at the band concert, and it was, when I got over there after being in a meeting here, it was extremely warm. Angie, you might have thought it too. And immediately I texted Jake and asked him what the problem was, and he came all the way back from home and fixed the problem, and it started cooling off. So thank you very much, Jake, for going above and beyond. Item K, consideration to approve first reading of NEOLA Update 32, Volume 1. I will be looking for a motion, please. This is the first reading.
I move the board to approve the first reading of the NEOLA Update 32, Volume 1.
Motion has been made by Bobby to approve the first reading of NEOLA Update 32, Volume 1. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Just to note that there were a couple changes to the said policies. Other than that, no.
And there were a couple that we pulled out for Dr. Sprague to do some further investigating that we will look at in the June committee meeting. Are there any questions to the first reading of NEOLA Update 32, Volume 1? Any other questions? Hearing no questions, the voting device is open for the first reading of the NEOLA Update 32, Volume 1. Would anybody like to change their vote? Okay, the vote is now closed, and the motion carries. All in favor. Item letter L, report of donations. I will be looking for a motion, please.
I move the board accept the following donations: $50 from various donors for the Clara R. McKenna Aquatic Center in memory of Dr. John McKenna. $200 from Edwin Barclay Schultz for the Clara R. McKenna Aquatic Center in memory of Dr. John McKenna. $500 from Switters The Equipment Incorporated for Anigo FFA. $500 from the class of 1969 for the AHS band program. $500 from Kevin Burschwell for AHS Drama Club. $100 from Todd and Linda Hendrickson for the AHS Drama Club. $500 from Anigo Dental Clinic for AHS softball program. $5,000 from the anonymous donor for the Clara R. McKenna Aquatic Center in memory of Dr. John McKenna. $100 from Sally Brown, Allison, Joe, Eddie, and Julia Hahn for the Clara R. McKenna Aquatic Center in memory of Dr. John McKenna. $15 from various donors for the Greenhouse Project in memory of Joseph Sabeda. $200 from Catherine Sabeda for the Greenhouse Project in memory of Joseph Sabeda. $700 from Charities Aid Foundation of America. Constellation for AHS Woodworking class. $5,000 from Flox Flames 4-H Club for the Greenhouse Project. $100 from Nancy Stengel for the Clara R. McKenna Aquatic Center in memory of Dr. John McKenna. $200 from James and Rebecca Frisch for Environmental Education Center at Neboken. $1,500 from Walmart Community Grants for Fill a Backpack, Fill a Need program for a total of $15,165. A thank you to our community business for recognizing our staff during Teacher Appreciation Week, including Walmart of Anigo's donation of cupcakes, granola fruit bars, fruit snacks, gift cards, and miscellaneous classroom items.
Motion has been made by Bobby. Would you like to speak to your motion?
No.
That was a mouthful. We have such a giving community that supports our school district, and it shows right there. Any other comments? Okay, voting device is now open. Would anybody like to change their vote? And the vote's now closed, and the motion carries. Thank you so much to our community for their giving. Item number 5, letter A, consideration of a motion to adjourn into closed session pursuant to section 19.851C of the Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of considering the employment status of a public employee over which the Board of Education exercises jurisdiction, including discussion regarding terms of administrator contracts. I will be looking for a motion.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Jill. Any discussion? Mary Kay, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Bardo,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Maddock Nelson,
Yes.
Matt Miller,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Schreiber,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Solon,
Yes.
Hyatt.
Yes. And the board is now in closed session. Thank you.
wife called me at 2, she was like.
Okay, the board is now back in open session. As a result of closed session, the board discussed administrator contracts. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Who said that?
Jill.
Jill. Jill made the motion to adjourn. All in favor of adjournment, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. Then it's carried. We are adjourned. Thank you, Dean.
Good luck with tomorrow. Good luck with tomorrow.
You could rap and get attention.
I can hear that. I gotta go see her first thing. Yeah.
Okay.
That, thank you.
You're right. Longer than 10
I'm supposed to give these to Carol. Republican Party is